الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So alhamdulillah, just like that, we're into the last third of Ramadan, this being the 20th night for many of us, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has encompassed us in His blessings and His mercy, giving us the opportunity to at least make it through 2/3 of Ramadan, and we are hopeful that the next third that is coming up will be, as has been promised, Hitqun min al-nar. That will be an emancipation from the hellfire, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, not by our tamanniyat, not by our wishful thinking for it, but inshallah by our striving and sa'i and etiquette with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and returning all that is good to Him and all that is deficient in terms of shortcomings back to our own inadequacies and ourselves. So we are looking at some of the verses, inshallah, in this session from the 20th juz of the Quran, and we'll be looking at Surah Al-Qasas, which is the 28th surah in the Quran. عند قوله تعالى بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن قارون كان من قوم موسى فبغى عليهم وآتيناه من الكنوز ما إن مفاتحه لتنوء بالعصبة أولي القوة إذ قال له قومه لا تفرح إن الله لا يحب الفرحين وابتغ فيما آتاك الله الدار الآخرة ولا تنس نصيبك من الدنيا وأحسن كما أحسن الله إليك ولا تبغي الفساد في الأرض إن الله لا يحب المفسدين. صدق الله العظيم. So these verses and the ones after them relay the story of Qarun, and as the verse says, in the Qarun كان من قوم موسى, he was from the qawm, he was from the people of Musa. So the people of Musa were not for the Pharaoh and the Egyptians, but they were the Bani Israel, from the descendants from Israel, the descendants from the tribes of Israel, namely Isaac and then Yaqub, alayhim as-salam. And some of the riwayat say that he was both, he was a cousin of Musa alayhi salam, so he was the son of his paternal uncle, as well as the son of his maternal aunt, who seems that they were married to one another. So at the same time, he was from the maternal side, and the paternal side, he was a cousin of Musa alayhi salam. And it's said that Qarun also was from amongst the most pious of Bani Israel, and he was an early follower of Moses, of Musa alayhi salam, and that he had the Torah more or less memorized by heart, and he was abid, someone who worshipped in the temple, and so he was from amongst, considered to be the most pious of the ummah, that ummah of Bani Israel. But that is going to change, as we will see. So the translation, Qarun was one of Moses' people, but he oppressed them. فَبَغَى عَلَيْهِمْ. فَبَغَى, yani later, or he did oppress his people. We had given him such treasures that even their keys would have weighed down a whole company of strong men. مَا إِنَّ مَفَاتِحُهُ لِتَنُوءُ بِالْعُصْبَةِ. These are just the keys to the treasuries, the amount of money that he had, the amount of wealth that he had, not the wealth itself. His people said to him, do not gloat, for God does not like people who gloat. إِذْ قَالَ لَهُ قَوْمُهُ لَا تَفْرَحْ. So here the farah, do not rejoice and gloat in that which has been given to you, for Allah does not like al-farihin. Inna Allah la yuhibbu al-farihin. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَابْتَغِي فِيمَا أَتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةِ. Seek the life to come by means of what has granted you, but do not neglect your rightful share in this world. Do good to others as God has done good to you. وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. And do not seek to spread corruption in the land. وَلَا تَبْغِ الْفَسَادَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. For God does not love those who do this, who spread fasad. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُفْسِدِينَ, those who spread fasad, those who sow corruption in the earth. So Qarun, being as he was of great knowledge, it is said that he then turned towards tijara, or towards expanding his wealth, which he was very successful in doing. And we'll see in the verses that come later, his wealth was of such a magnitude that he would even go out in pomp and circumstances with thousands of people, his entourage more or less, walking with him. But here the ishara in this verse, or in this set of verses, before we get to that, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says on the tongue of his people, لا تفرح إن الله لا يحب الفرحين. So this idea of farah, this idea of happiness and enjoyment, most of the time when it's mentioned in the Quran, usually we see that the end of the verse is succeeded by لا يحب الفرحين, like in this verse, لا تفرح إن الله لا يحب الفرحين. Do not rejoice, do not gloat in that which you come to acquire in your possessions. Allah does not love those who gloat and find rejoicing in the things that they acquire. And if we look to the verse in Surah Yunus, which I think we covered in one of these sessions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what to have farah with. قُلْ بِفَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَبِرَحْمَتِهِ فَبِذَلِكَ فَلْيَفْرَحُوا هُوَ خَيْرٌ مِمَّا يَجْمَعُونَ. Say by the fadl, the grace and the mercy of God, let them rejoice. It is better in that than that which they acquire. So here's the dichotomy of that which you possess, that's what you come to acquire. People seeing themselves as kind of the sum total of their possessions. And so when we acquire stuff, we acquire things, then we see that as a mark of value or of substance. And that's not the divine paradigm. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ بِفَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَبِرَحْمَتِهِ. Say by the grace and mercy of God, you should rejoice in that. So you may still have these things or this stuff, but attribute it to the one it should be attributed to, namely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the fadl, so by the grace and mercy. Why these two things, grace and mercy, in the other verse? Well, we said that al-fadl is that which you receive without having done anything to necessarily be entitled to it. So it's not a recompense, right? Allah's not rewarding you by giving you things, right? Or by giving you ease of life, or by giving you many children, or by giving you health, and so forth. It's not a reward per se, it's fadl min Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is pure grace from Allah, and you didn't necessarily do anything to deserve it. And so then you shouldn't attribute it to yourself, as Qarun is going to do in the verses that come after this, when he says, إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي. I've been giving this because of my knowledge. So he attributed, he made the affiliation to himself, but attribute it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the operative word that the ulama use when you want to attribute something to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not to yourself, they call it al-minnatu lillah wahdahu. Al-man wal-minna. So al-man is the verbal noun form of it. Allahu yamunnu alayk. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he gives you this thing out of his pure virtue. And then we say this is al-minna lillah. So al-minna lillah means attribute, affiliate all that is good, all that you have of ease and facilitation in your life, affiliate that with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not with yourself. And then find happiness and joy in that, not in the things that you've acquired, and not in the things that you think you've done of your own volition and of your own, because of your own knowledge and because of your own charisma and because of your own skill and so forth, as most of Ahl Dunya do, most of the people of Dunya, that's how they see it. I worked hard for this, that's why I have this, so forth. But see it as a facilitation and as a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-minnatu lillah wahdahu. So all gratitude and all attribution of all that is good that you have should go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the adab, all that is of shortcomings and deficiencies and unfortunate things. Yes, indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner of that and creator of that, but the adab, the etiquette with Allah is to attribute to ourselves, right? ظهر الفساد بما كسبت أيديكم ويعفو الله عن كثير. The fasad that you find, the corruption you find, is a result of our own shortcomings, of our own ifsad. So fasad is, it's commonly translated as corruption, but I think it has a wider meaning than that. It means not putting the blessing in the proper place. And then the opposite, or the dichotomy, the flip side of ifsad is islah. So islah is to put things in the proper order, is to rectify things. So if you think of, the stewardship we've been given, the responsibility, the amana over the earth has been given to human beings, part of that amana is to put things in their proper place. So you can think of it as kind of like a big chessboard or as a big puzzle board, and things have to be done right in the proper place. So these resources have to be done properly. Orphans have to be taken care of. Widows have to be taken care of. The environment should not be misused or abused. Natural resources should be identified and should be used in a proper way. The animals on the face of the earth, we should never, because of our usurpation, drive any animal species to extinction. So these are things all out of place, and we can call it fasad. Right? And the one who puts them out of their proper place by their own actions, the only creature on terrestrial earth that's been given the ability to do that is man, is us. We would never say that other creatures like animals cause ifsad. They haven't been given the amana. They haven't been given the trust. So the ones who have been given the trust, namely us, human beings, we can do ifsad. So وَلَا تَبْغِي الْفَسَادَ فِي الْأَرْضِ, right? Do not make fasad fil ard. So gloating in one's own glory and in one's own acquisitions and one's own accumulations, that is a type of fasad. And the one who is the owner of such goat and gloating and glory and so forth, this is a mufsid, right? Because it takes away from the creator. It takes away from looking at the creator. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentions in these verses, وَابْتَغِ فِي مَا أَتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ. هذا إصلاح. So that's the opposite of ifsad. This is the rectified thing to do. Seek that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared for you in the Dar al-Akhirah, in other words, in the next life. Take the steps in this life so that you may avail yourself of the things in the next life. وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. This is one of, I think, oft misunderstood verses, this particular part. وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيا. And do not neglect your nasib, your allotment of the dunya. Many people understand this to mean, that means you have a balance between deen and dunya, and that means it's okay to splurge and, enjoy life and take care of yourself and that sort of thing. And I'm not saying that attitude per se is wrong, but I don't think that's what the verse means. That's not what the Mufassirun say. They said the nasib of the dunya is مَا يُوَصِّلَكَ إِلَى الْآخِرَةِ. The nasib, that which is your allotment of the dunya, is that which will take you to the akhirah. Nothing more, nothing less. And one of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that's mentioned here, I can find it. Yes, قال صلى الله عليه وسلم ليس لابن آدم حق في سوى هذه الخصال بيت يسكنه وثواب يواريه وثواب يواري عورته وجرف الخبز والماء. هذا رواه أحمد والترمذي وصححه. So Imam Tirmidhi said it's Sahih Hadith, and the meaning, there is nothing except these three things for the sons and daughters of Adam. Baytun yaskunuhu, a home, a house for shelter. وَثَوَابٌ يُوَارِي عَوْرَتَهُ, and clothing by which to cover one's nakedness. وَجَرَفِ الْخُبْزِ وَالْمَاءِ, and even coarse bread and water. in terms of food. In other words, your nasib of the dunya is to take that which you need as a zad, as a provision. And we've mentioned this before in some of these sessions. So there's two different attitudes we can have here. We can see the dunya as that which I need for provision. So I see myself as a musafir, right? كن في الدنيا كغريب أو عابر سبيل. Be in the dunya like someone, like a strange to you, gharib, or like a traveler, or abir sabil, someone who's passing through. So the dunya there is for your zed. You can look at it as that, and what you take of it is a provision to get you to the next place. And you know, when you travel, it's easier to get to the place you want to go if you travel light, right? So we should be traveling light in this life, light in the sense of our footprint in terms of not just natural resources, what people talk about today, you know, about eco footprint and things like that. And certainly I think that's part of it, but also our social footprint and our emotional footprints also should be light. In other words, we should not present ourselves as a burden to anyone or anything, in as much as we can. So we should not present ourselves as a burden emotionally to others. You know, we don't want people to have to do heavy lifting just to tolerate us. We want people more than just tolerate us. We want them to be better because of their interaction with us, because they know us. We want them to be in a better state, not in a state where they have to do heavy emotional lifting just to deal with us. So, you know, what we call khafif al-mu'na. Khifat al-mu'na means, you know, and the Prophet ﷺ kind of alluded to this in one of the hadith, that the best of people, الذين يوطئون أكنافا الذين يألفون ويؤلفون, the ones who lower their wings, right? In other words, metaphorically, out of mercy and accommodate others. يألفون ويؤلفون. يألفون, they get along well with others, or they get along with others easily. ويؤلفون, the passive form of it, and others get along easily or well with them. And so we want our footprint to be khafif, right? And in the verses from the juz from yesterday, from the other session, الذين يمشون على الأرض هونا, the ones who tread lightly on the earth. So this can mean literally and also meaningfully, you know, metaphorically, allegorically, figuratively. Tread lightly in that we don't leave imprints behind that are damaging, neither to the earth, not to the earth's resources, not to the animals, not to other creatures, and certainly not to other human beings, and certainly not to people who are in our charge, people that we are held responsible for our mu'amala directly towards them. And this would include our relations, parents, spouses, children, neighbors, colleagues, people you run into, you know, on the street, whatever, or increasingly people you run into online. They also have rights on you and me, and one of those is not to impose and be this emotional burden upon them. You know, these people who get on the internet and are with the troll behavior and, you know, say despicable things and lambast people's physical, you know, their bodies and their ethnicities and their religion, and, you know, and say really nasty things that you would never think they would say that to them in person. You know, هذا كلام سيحسب عليه. These are words that count. It's not just, oh, I'm behind a screen and nobody can see me, and if I'm anonymous, I don't know my name or anything like that. No, abadan. Certainly there's going to be a muhasaba about that, and certainly Muslims should be aware more than anyone else that there's going to be a reckoning for those things. And so you can make your point in a gentle, easy, endearing way, rather than, you know, throwing bricks at people, and even worse, throwing excrement at people, basically because they disagree with you, or you disagree with them, or you don't like the way that they look, or you don't like their madhab, or you don't like the color of their hat, or whatever it might be. So this haughtiness and gloating and you know, ajrafa, arrogant kind of way of carrying yourself in the world, Qarun is the archetype of that. And remember, in the Quran we have certain archetypes. So Pharaoh, who is not from Bani Israel, but who was from the Egyptians, he's the archetype of Jababira, of tyranny, of brutality, of arrogance, of seeking to impose oneself not just as a leader over others, but as their God. And that is kind of the epitome in that sort of archetype. And Qarun also represents an archetype, right? And he represents the archetype of this arrogance and haughtiness, but in the manner of istimalat al-qulub, right? So he didn't sort of impose himself on people like Pharaoh did, forcefully or aggressively with an army that was headed by Haman, like Pharaoh did, but his imposition was one of misleading and capturing their hearts. As we'll see in the verses that come after this, I guess we should get to that, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَخَرَجَ عَلَى قَوْمِهِ فِي زِينَتِهِ قال الذين يريدون الحياة الدنيا يا ليت لنا مثل ما أوتي قارون إنه لذو حظ عظيم وقال الذين أوتوا العلم ويلكم ثواب الله خير لمن آمن وعمل صالحا ولا يلقاها إلا الصابرون فخسفنا به وبداره الأرض فما كان له من فئة ينصرونه من دون الله وما كان من المنتصرين وأصبح الذين تمنوا مكانه بالأمس يقولون ويكأن الله يبسط الرزق لمن يشاء من عباده ويقدر لولا أن من الله علينا لخسف بنا ويكأنه لا يفلح الكافرون. Did I miss a verse here? Oh, I'm sorry, I missed a verse. Yes. So before that set of verses, قال إنما أوتيته على علم عندي أولم يعلم أن الله قد أهلك من قبله من القرون من هو أشد منه قوة وأكثر جمعا ولا يسأل عن ذنوبهم المجرمون. So that verse, here's Qarun's response when they said لا تبغي الفساد في الأرض إن الله لا يحب المفسدين. Why are you so in corruption? But he answered, this wealth was given to me on account of the knowledge I possess. إنما أوتيته على علم عندي. So there's the ana, there's the me. I possess, I have. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds to him, أولم يعلم أن الله قد أهلك من قبله من القرون من هو أشد منه قوة وأكثر جمعا ولا يسأل عن ذنوبهم المجرمون. Did he not know that God has destroyed many generations before him, who had greater power than him and built up greater wealth? The guilty will not be questioned about their sins. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already has knowledge. He doesn't need to ask them to know, did they do it or not do it. If his one is considered a mujrim, and in that sense, and this ijram, this intransience and recalcitrance against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, thabata and Allah, it's confirmed with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no need to ask them. So some of them, this verse may indicate some of them will be entered into hellfire, like some of those who will be entered into paradise min ghayri hisab, without munaqashat hisab, without a reckoning. Some people will be fortunate enough, and others on the flip side of that may be entered into hellfire also without a formal reckoning because of Allah's knowledge that of that which they do. And that's what Ibn Ajiba says, بل يدخلهم النار بغتة. يعني they may enter بغتة, immediately without any sort of pause. Allah will protect us from that. And then the verses after that, فخرج على القوم في زينته. Then he went out among his people in all his pomp and circumstance. And those whose aim was the life of this world said, if only we had been given something like what Qarun had been given, he really is a fortunate man. This is what we mean by the imposition on the hearts of people. فخرج على قومه في زينته قال الذين يريدون الحياة الدنيا. Those who seek the حياة الدنيا, يا ليت لنا, where would we not have the same مثل ما أوتي قارون, that which Qarun has. إنه لذو حظ عظيم. He has a great حظ, right? How did he translate it here? He's a very fortunate man, or he's been given a great lot in life. And the majority of the Mufassirun said the people who said this were not disbelievers. They were believers. But when they saw Qarun, and he was also considered to be amongst, for a long time, the most pious And some of them said in the verse that came before, إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي. What they said, what ilm, what knowledge did he have? They said knowledge of the Torah, knowledge of the Torah. So he was a Torah scholar. And it was said that the only people who were more versed and learned in the Torah than him were the prophets Musa and Harun, Moses and Aaron, his cousins. And that the third one was Qarun. And how did he go astray? There's one riwayah that Imam al-Baghawi includes, which likely is from al-Isra'iliyat, which we can give it consideration, but I wouldn't put too much stock in it, in that he was a worshipper in muta'abbid, right, worshiping in the temple, and Satan came to him and coaxed him and tricked him until finally he began to think that, why is Moses imposing himself upon us? And then when Musa alayhi salam came and said that you have to pay zakat, right? And he said, out of 1,000, every 1,000 units of gold or silver that you have, we just want one. Just one from 1,000. So not 2.5% now, like we have. One from 1,000. And he refused. He said, why should I give it to you? إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي. I work for this myself. Why should I give it to others? It belongs to me. So hence the haughtiness and the arrogance. And then the believers saw him with his thousands, they said thousands of ghilman and thousands of jawari. So he had young men and young women, thousands on either side of him, and he had a steed that was, of the best stock, and that he had a gold saddle that he was riding upon, and he was wearing red and yellow, and these colors of farah, of royalty, so to speak. He saw himself as royalty. And then they said, we wish we would have something like Qarun, إِنَّهُ لَذُو حَظٍّ عَظِيمٍ. But then there was another group of believers who said something different, the verse after. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ وَيْلَكُمْ ثواب الله خير لمن آمن وعمل صالحا ولا يلقاها إلا الصابرون. But those who are given knowledge, that's what the verse says. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ, the ones who have been given ilm, knowledge, they said, alas for you, God's reward is better for those who believe and do good deeds. Only those who are steadfast will attain this. وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الصَّابِرُونَ. So here they said this ilm, utul ilm, they've been given knowledge. Notice how the contrast. What did Qarun say about himself? إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي. He said, my knowledge, and so this is what made him, his knowledge, what did it give him? Pomp and circumstance and entourage and, and spectacle. That's what his knowledge led him to. And that's a certain archetype. And we have those types today. You draw your own conclusions. And then what did the people who have knowledge, what did they say? They said, we've been given this knowledge, right? They didn't say that, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying about them, utul ilm, right? So it puts knowledge in its proper perspective. Knowledge is given from Allah to people, and it's cast in their hearts, like Imam Malik said. العلم نور يقذفه الله في القلوب. Knowledge is light that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala casts into the hearts. So it's the hearts that have knowledge. And what type of knowledge is this? Right? This is fiqh al-qulub also. Right? This is the knowledge of the hearts and the knowledge of reality. So not just knowledge of the ahkam, not just knowledge of the rules of the Torah, because you know what, Qarun knew those very well, probably even better than these people who said that it's better for you the deeds that will lead to the next life, because Qarun was a Torah scholar, so he knew, the intricacies and the ins and outs and the ahkam and the legal rulings of prayer and fasting and zakah and all those things. He knew them quite well, but he didn't know al-ilm al-ladunni, or he didn't have the type of knowledge that Allah casts into the hearts. That is fiqh al-qulub, right? The knowledge of reality, the knowledge of the hearts, the knowledge of Allah. He wasn't arif billah. These people were arifin, right? These people were awliya, and they had knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they're the ones who said, this is nonsense. We can see behind the curtain, right? We can see the spectacle and the mirage of all of this and the mere facade that it is. and that it's not real and it's not something that we should be rejoicing in, because it's a transgression against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is making a mockery of His ni'mah, making a mockery of the blessings that we've been given. And so they said, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ وَيْلَكُمْ, a stern warning. ثَوَابُ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ لِمَنْ آمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا. The reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is better for those who believe and do the good deeds. وَلَا يُلْقَاهَا إِلَّا الصَّابِرُونَ. So actually it's not enough just to believe and do the good deeds, because the first group, that's what they were. They were believers, so they believed and they did the good deeds, but they were missing something. The last part of this verse. وَلَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الصَّابِرُونَ. وَلَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الصَّابِرُونَ means only the ones who are steadfast and have patience and forbearance will get this. Forbearance with what? Steadfastness with what? With qada Allah wa qadrihi, right? With that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees for one's circumstances, and knows that do not have this a'jab bikathrat al-khabith, do not have this bewilderment, and don't let the kathra, the multitude of all that is still khabith, that is still impure, make an imprint upon your heart so that you're drawn to it. And that's one of the things about this imposition that Qarun did, willingly or unwillingly, wittingly or unwittingly, upon the believers, is that if people have love of dunya in their heart, which is a natural inclination for people, then they will also give qadr, they will give a maqam, they will give to the people of dunya, the people who possess dunya, and see them as bigger than they really are, and see them as a model or exemplar to follow. And yet when people see someone who has very little in terms of material wealth, or in terms of accumulation and acquisitions, they don't put much stock in that. And he can be from kibar al-awliya. He could be from the type of person that the Prophet ﷺ said that لَوْ أَقْسَمَ اللَّهَ لَأَبَرَّهُ, if he were to make an oath, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would fulfill his oath. And he may look like Ash'ath Akhbar, he's dusty and he's doesn't have very nice clothes and ratted clothing in the hair, and they don't think anything of him. وَلَكِنْ لَوْ أَقْسَمَ اللَّهَ لَأَبَرَّهُ. But if he were to make an oath, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would fulfill that oath for him on the spot. So then what happened to Qarun after this? فَخَسَفْنَا بِهِ وَبِدَارِهِ الْأَرْضِ فَمَا كَانَ لَهُ مِنْ فِئَةٍ يَنْصُرُونَهُ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُنْتَصِرِينَ. We caused the earth to swallow him and his home, where he had his treasure. He had no army to help him against God, nor could he defend himself. And it's that literally the earth swallowed him up, and then he started going down, first to his knees, then to his mid-chest and his neck, and then everything went with him. And those who were enamored with him too, some of them went with him as well. And the ones that didn't go, what did they say? وَأَصْبَحَ الَّذِينَ تَمَنَّوْا مَكَانَهُ بِالْأَمْسِ يَقُولُونَ وَيْكَأَنَّ اللَّهَ يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ وَيَقْدِرُ لولا أن من الله علينا لخسف بنا وكأنه لا يفلح الكافرون. The next day, those who had the day before wished to be in his place exclaimed, Alas for you, Qarun, it is God alone who gives what he will, abundantly or sparingly, to whichever he will of his creatures. If God had not been gracious to us, and gracious here is the word men that we talked about earlier, لولا أن من الله علينا, if it was not for Allah's grace upon us, he would have caused the earth to swallow us too, right? Because we would have been deserving of it, because we said, and we were seeking the same thing that he had. But it was Allah's men, his grace with us, he was gracious with us. He did not cause the earth to swallow us as well. Alas, indeed, those who deny the truth will never prosper. لولا أن من الله علينا لخسف بنا وكأن لا يفلح الكافرون. And then finally, in this set of verses, تلك الدار الآخرة نجعلها للذين لا يريدون علوا في الأرض ولا فسادا والعاقبة للمتقين من جاء بالحسنة فله خير منها ومن جاء بالسيئة فلا يجزى الذين عملوا السيئات إلا ما كانوا يعملون. We grant the home in the hereafter those who do not seek superiority or arrogance upon earth or spread corruption. The meek shall inherit the earth. This is a biblical concept, and it's also a Quranic concept. We grant the home in the hereafter to those who do not seek superiority on earth or spread corruption. الذين يمشون على الأرض هونا. The one whose footprint upon the earth, his imprint upon the earth is light. They are traveling light towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The happy ending is awarded to those who are mindful of God. Whoever comes before God with a good deed will receive a better reward. Whoever comes with an evil deed will be punished only for what he has done. And it said that the first of these verses here in the Tafseer, تلك الدار الآخرة نجعلها للذين لا يريدون علوا في الأرض ولا فسادا والعاقبة للمتقين, is a verse that Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Aziz, who's often referred to as the fifth righteous Khalifa from Bani Umayyah, used to say it all the time, and even he would be saying it upon his deathbed, that particular verse, reminding himself, تلك الدار الآخرة نجعلها للذين لا يريدون علوا في الأرض ولا فسادا. Those who do not seek ulu, do not seek to be the ulu of Qarun and Fir'aun and Haman, ولا فسادا, or the corruption that all of them spread in the earth. والعاقبة للمتقين. The عاقبة, that which is coming, is for the muttaqeen. So don't lose heart on seeing what's happening around you, but العاقبة للمتقين. من جاء بالحسنة فله خير منها. Whoever brings the hasana will even be given something better than it. ومن جاء بالسيئة فلا يجزى الذين عملوا السيئات إلا ما كانوا يعملون. And as for those who bring the sayyah, the sinful thing, or the thing that is out of place, as we said, in terms of this paradigm of corruption and rectification, if you bring something out of place, فلا يجزى الذين عملوا السيئات إلا ما كانوا يعملون. You will not have anything except be recompensed in a way that is just to you for that which you have done. والله تعالى أعلم وأعلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. بارك الله فيكم في القرآن العظيم وارزقنا تلاوته آناء الليل والنهار وفهمنا معانيه وقربه إلينا واجعله جلاء همنا وحزننا بمنك وفضلك وكرمك يا أرحم الراحمين. أسعد الله أوقاتكم وصيامكم وقيامكم وفطوركم وجعلكم من الصالحين المصلحين المؤمنين الآمنين بمنه وفضله وكرمه. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.